Comeback Team community, welcome to the Sarasota edition. We've got a very special guest today. We've got Tiki Anderson, Sarasota Police Officer, athlete extraordinaire. We're here at her home high school at TA's, Coach T.A. Anderson's esteemed high school in Sarasota, Florida, Sarasota High School. Tiki basically was a three-sport athlete. She played volleyball, she played basketball, she played softball, standout, letter. Just like her little brother, right? Big brother?
Big little big brother.
Little big brother. Yeah, they were both obviously super athletes, superhumans. Well, we're here to talk about her comeback. Like we always say, doesn't matter who we are, what we're doing, what stage of life we're in, we're always going to have setbacks. We're always going to have comebacks. And we did a biomechanical evaluation on her. We saw a lot of opportunity for growth and improvement, a lot of opportunity for understanding and isolation of residual problems that may need a little tweaking. But bottom line is the future is bright. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the process. We're going to talk about her feelings and confidence, because ultimately, people come into this moment with a lot of fear, a lot of worry, a lot of frustration, a lot of lack of hope. One of the most fundamental goals of all is to try to give people a process, a strategy, and a landscape, and ultimately a vision for getting back to who they want to be when they grow up, at least the best that they can be, back to TA's classic, better every day. We don't have to be perfect to be better. And bottom line, I'm going to hand this over to Coach TA and let him do a more personal, more appropriate, more inspired, family-oriented intro, and then we'll get into it.
It's always an honor to be here with the Comeback Team. With Coach Masson, as I call him, and Uncle Chuck. We've had some adventures together with subjects that maybe we have all just first met, or people that we've just come across our path. But sometimes you experience opportunities with special people that are close to you. And I get a chance to have my little sister here today, Tiki, and a little bit about her. I'm older than her, but there's a period of time where she was bigger and faster and stronger than me. So, I attribute a lot of my athleticism, former, past, and current, to her chasing me around and trying to beat me up. But in all sincerity, though, she's always inspired me. She's always been more consistent than me, more deliberate than me. And the things that I've learned from her through the years are how to have a plan, how to operate with strategy. And all of that came out, when she decided to follow in my footsteps to start with what I originally studied, which was criminal justice. And she thought that was a pretty cool thing. So she decided to study criminal justice too. And next thing you know, she's been a police officer for over 20 years. So, but she has been banged up a little bit. She's had a couple issues. I'll let her explain them to you. But, it's a perfect opportunity to take what the very purpose that we created our Comeback Team for. And when you can apply it to people that you love and respect, and it doesn't get any better than that. So I want to introduce my young sister, Tiki. Tiki, why are we here? Tell them a little bit about your history, what you do, how you do it, and some of the things that may have hindered your progress or held you back a little bit in the past, as it relates to your nicks and knacks.
Well, so you want me to start back, like way back?
Do you think?
So for years, we always went back and forth, like how many sports are you going to play? How many games do you have this week? And so it was always a competition, which was always a positive thing, because it always kept us getting better and, and one-upping each other and everything. So throughout our lives, we didn't have time to sit around and wonder what was next, because next always was there. And, so throughout the years, we did all of our sports and then stuck with it. And throughout elementary, middle school, high school was the big change, I think, for both of us. Well, Trevor was back with Little League, and, I was with the travel softball then. But then growing up, or getting further into life, it was what's going to help us in our future too. So, everyone aspires to be a pro athlete or whatever they want to be, but at the time it was, let's just do the best we can do right now. And as our dad always said, you have to get better every day, and good enough is not enough. So let's do as much as we can, right? So mom and dad split their times between both of us doing our sports, which turned us into always having the schedules and always having looking forward to something. So high school comes around. That's when I started being the multi-sport athlete that I was. I still am. I mean, maybe we're not right this moment, but I'm going to get back there. And going into volleyball and basketball and softball and everything kept me busy. I tried to do the best I could do, or I always did the best I could do. And it landed me a college scholarship for volleyball. I took that on, took my high school or my college education into criminal justice, like Trevor said, and had the opportunity to come back home to Sarasota. I went to school in Atlanta, Georgia State, and did really well there. Came back, Sarasota. I've been back here 20 years plus as a police officer. And to me, it was nice to bring back home or be in my hometown and work with the community and everybody that I know, and see everybody grow up, and back here with my family. And even though they're in Orlando, it's still close enough to do this and that, right?
Well, tell them, some of the things that, because I know that you operate, like whenever they had the police Olympics or whatnot, you were the star of the volleyball team, whether it was hard court or sand and any of these different types of things. I remember going and watching you run Muddy Buddy and all these adventure races and savage races and things like that. And we always aspired to be on Amazing Race together. We actually thought, and then she ended up getting pregnant with her son, my nephew, and we ended up putting that on the sideline. But it's something we always aspired to do. And then I know you started grabbing a couple injuries. Little things started happening to you. Talk about that.
So the little things started happening. My body started things started taking a toll on themselves. I would say I was doing a lot of fitness competitions, and so I was in the best shape of my life even after I had my son. And as things moved forward, as aggressive as I was growing up, started catching up to me. So my knees started bothering me, and then this started happening. And law enforcement is a very aggressive career, strenuous. You're doing a lot of physical activities. You have to stay in shape. So you're doing the best you can all the time, and it takes a toll on you. So I started with the knee injuries. I've had both of my knees replaced. I came back from that. I went back to playing volleyball, basketball, and softball in my adult years in the co-ed leagues and everything like that. And I was able to do that. Police Olympics, that was what I looked forward to every year. I could jump through the roof basically. And then moving forward, I had a few more injuries. My back gave out on me. I had to do that. Setback again. I came above that. Moving forward. Every time I had a setback, I overcame it. And try to be bigger, stronger, faster than I was before. The most recent scenario that I've gone through was I had a shoulder injury through work. So right now I'm in a point in my life where, like Coach Masson said, you get down on yourself. You start to have fear. You start to worry, am I ever going to be the same again? And that's kind of where I transition back and forth. Like I know I'm mentally I'm there, but physically I'm not quite there yet. So the physical and the mental aspects of your life start to literally butt heads with each other, and you have to just try to rise above and overcome. And so by the grace of God, like I've had this opportunity today to meet with these fine young men, and they've all encouraged me and told me these are little things in life. These are all things that we see you overcoming. You're coming back going to be stronger than you were before. Do you have it do you have it? Yes, I do. I've had it my whole life. I just, everybody's human. So, my human side kind of has taken over a little bit, but with the encouragement and the motivation and the time and the effort that they've put into me, there's no turning back. So that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, and what's cool is Chuck and Dr. Masson were able to find some very significant things very early on, and it's almost like I wanted to stand a little bit on the outskirts and kind of see if what I had been seeing all along or what I had been seeing progressively was lining up with what you guys were seeing. Chuck, talk a little bit about not only some of the things that you might have seen in Tiki, but some of the things that you see to be consistent with areas of the body. Once one thing gets bound up, it normally has a result, if this, then that. In your professional, over 40 plus years of experience with the best athletes in the world and the best regular people in the world, what are some of the things that you saw in Tiki that are pretty consistent across the board?
I could relate to her in many regards. In fact, I've had a knee replacement, and just understanding what it did to me and how I felt and understanding the biomechanics, the fact that once the knee is replaced, the rehab early on is to try and just flex the knee. But the knee just doesn't flex. There's also a glide to it. Think of the femur, which is your thigh bone, that's going to move forward. As the knee flexes, it moves forward on the tibia, which is more fixed, and there should be this gliding relationship. If we don't have that, you lose the motion, you lose some of the motion and function in the foot, in the ankle, which is going to affect the foot. But let's move up, because the knee is stuck between the foot and the hip. It's also going to lose the ability of the hip to go through proper anterior, posterior tilting in the proper sequence at the proper time. And what's starting to happen, or what has happened, which is very common, is when we think of Tiki's hip moving over her foot, the hip should be gliding as well on the femur, on the head of the thigh bone. They were moving at the same pace. So that's now affecting the function and the movement of the hip. That becomes somewhat limited in motion, and then we start to see compensations occur. What we have to do is see what's going on above and below. Because there wasn't proper movement here, it's affecting the movement down here. And what's interesting is the foot and ankle, the hips, and the thoracic spine, which many have heard us say before. These are the three most mobile regions of the body. If they become limited in motion, then we start to see the compensations in the knee, in the back, in the shoulders, maybe the cervical spine, depending on the individual. We have to gain some of this back. You're very strong. There was nothing that we did from a neurological test, from a muscle testing standpoint, from a gait standpoint, that you didn't compensate. Let me rephrase that you didn't have the strength, and because of your compensations, you're still able to function. Mm-hmm. The issue is we're getting it from the wrong places at the wrong time. And what we have to try and do now is get the joints to, the bone segments of the joints to communicate with each other and to get the proper sequencing. When we did some of that, yes, it was uncomfortable. Why? Because you've got adhesions in the knee. You've had shoulder issues. We got adhesions there. Those tissues are short and tight now that have to be lengthened. So think of it as you became too stable in certain regions. We don't want to necessarily go and build stability on top of your stability. We need to get you more mobile in certain places, which will allow the tissues to do what they should do physiologically. And you'll see that they'll lengthen. Then you're going to have to control the range of motion and stabilize. And all of a sudden, things are going to start freeing up.
So Dr. Masson, you mentioned about that. I know that you mentioned before that it was a time, it was very similar to Tiki's story, right? Where she said that mental and that physical start butting heads. You were getting into your late 40s. You know, you had a few injuries. You're like, all right, this has happened. Okay, now that's happened. I'm almost 50 years old. Everybody talks about how 50 is like a decline of some sort. Share a little bit about when you got banged up in your upper 40s, how you came back from that, and what are some of the strategies that you used?
Yeah, I know we've talked about it a little bit on previous podcasts, but my series of injuries happened in my late 40s. Ended up with a clavicle fracture first, a couple of nose fractures, playing basketball with 2 surgeries there, I have a plate and 8 screws in my right clavicle. I ended up with knee surgery for meniscal tear and a ligament tear. And then ultimately, the big one, when I hurt my neck and had a disc herniation, and ultimately had neck reconstruction surgery. And I was 49 at that point. And going into that surgery, that was my wake-up call. All the others, I was just soldiering through. It didn't really affect me. It didn't really scare me. I hadn't hidden that emotional level yet. The neck injury scared me to death. And maybe that's partially because that's what I do for a living and I knew too much, but it just really did. And so at that point, I really started, I had options. One option was just to crawl into a hole and hide. That's not me. What I really did was I just started analyzing every aspect of my existence. And it occurred to me that, wow, I'm 49, I'm falling apart. How am I living? How am I training? How am I preparing? What's my process look like? What's my rest recovery look like? Am I really the young athlete I was? I'm showing up for events, with my game face on, and I'm weekend warrior, aggressive. I'm all in, full send, but I'm not training. I'm not eating right. I'm drinking too much. I'm working too hard. I'm not sleeping enough. I mean, you name it, I was doing it poorly. Everything I learned as a young athlete, everything I learned as a young adult, I had abandoned because of burden, work, obligation, and then on top of it all, the haunting, the whispering that we all hear, well, you're almost 50. You know what? I don't believe that. And I didn't believe it then, but I thought it. And I was letting myself think it. And I was falling into that decrepit little hole where I was, well, you're almost 50. So anyway, I set up a total pivot, not just because I had surgery. That was the easy part. The hard part was reimagining myself and resuming the young me, and with the tenacity and the resilience and the fire and the commitment and the waking up at 5 a.m. and making time. Damn the high waters, I had goals and I wasn't done. So I ended up my first recovery goal. I'm big on recovery goals. You have to set a flag, and then you got to go get that flag. It was Kilimanjaro, 7 months post neck reconstruction. Okay, check. That gave me the enlightenment, the awareness, and the confidence. Okay, wow, if I can just bounce back from neck reconstruction surgery and climb Kilimanjaro, Tanzania, Africa, what else can I do? So I started playing basketball again. I started playing tennis again. Started training for it. I started realizing playing a sport isn't training. It's not preparation. It's active weekend warrior style injury opportunity. So I started preparing for my choices. I started skiing aggressively again. Before you knew it, I was chaperoning my kid. The number one most compelling reason all this mattered, it wasn't love of sport, which is organic and real in me. It was because my kids were finally old enough where I was finally going to get to play with them. Even though I'm losing speed and vertical, I still had a lot of capability left in me. And they were finally old enough to make it fun. And I was going to miss all of it. And I warned them the whole time, watch out, when you're older, I'm going to play with you. And here I was falling apart. So that was my guiding light. Next thing you know, I'm chaperoning Colorado Racing School. I'm in 2 Rolex 24s in the prototype class, on the podium, playing open tennis again. I'm 58-ish, a couple of months. I've had the best physical decade of my existence after that crisis and when I was 49. So, it's not everybody can be as fortunate as I am, but we can all aim to be the best that we can be. And that's what this process is really all about. It's accept your losses, accept your limits, but test them. Make sure they're real. Don't just assume that it's over.
Just because everybody else might have said this or that. So as we round up here and we start closing things down, I want to all give her a piece from our individual perspectives because, if we look at ourselves in like 3 circles that intertwine, all right, we have Dr. Masson in this medical circle, okay, then we have Chuck, and not bound by the circle, by the way, but just in that environment. Then we have Chuck in the clinical circle, the clinical environment, and then we have TA, me, the coach in the performance environment. All of them are very critical to the overall, wellness of the athlete, of the patient, of the client, or what have you, right? But from each of our circles, and we'll end off with you, so you end it off. I'm going to start, and I want to just give from my experience and wisdom, what I've seen in the past of injured athletes, people coming back from all different types of things. My recommendation is this. Don't be afraid to unload and regress. Because as we want to make progress and as we want to come back, we oftentimes get caught up in what we used to be and where we were 6 months ago, where we were before, and how I jumped out of the gym in the Police Olympics. Not that you can't get back to that, but don't be afraid to unload and regress, right? That's not negative. But typically, we've always hear that regress. What are we talking about, regress? It means move backwards. No, it means be willing to step backwards, right? To be able to sort things out. Like Coach just said, going out and playing the sport is not the same as preparing for the sport. Mm-hmm. You can't say, I exercised, I played basketball. No, you didn't prepare for basketball today, right? So if you want to come back and play at a high level in your upper 40s, upper mid 50s, 60s, going to 70 years old, don't be afraid to step back, regress and unload so that you can make that progress. If I want this rubber band to be powerful, I can pull it back. But once I pull it back, that's when I can let it go and it fires forward powerfully. So that would be my message. Chuck, what do you think?
Regress before you progress is, to me, that's one of the philosophies, one of the mantras that I go by, particularly when I look at people who've had either sedentary behavior or injuries. And you've had the injury issues. Regression isn't stepping back and saying, I'm not going to do as much. Regression is, we have to make sure that you have the movements coming from the right regions of the body. When you have that, then you're going to start seeing the tissues get stronger, which will allow you to progress forward. Now, you said something else earlier too, TA, and that was the interdisciplinary approach. We need for you an interdisciplinary approach. I'm not just talking about medical, clinical performance. I think you're going to need somebody to do some good soft tissue work on you, because there's mobilizations that need to be done. You have a number of trigger points, number of adhesions that need to be broken down. Get that moving properly. Then we immediately do a regressive movement because you have this freedom of motion, but now that freedom of motion you have to be able to control. If you can't control that, then you've been set up for failure. Well, it's the strategies that we would do from a regressive approach and then develop the process of how we do it through the performance approach, which will then get more functional feeding to your tissues to take care of a lot of the medical issues. So this is going to be a slow but progressive process. What did you say in the presentation last week? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Yeah, and that's what we have to get you to do, is become slow, but to do it smoothly, do it in all three planes of motion, do it effectively, which will then produce your efficiency. And then you'll be able to start doing it faster or more intensely with weight, more intensely with thresholds and capacities will increase. In other words, right now you live within this box. We want to get this box out here. We don't even have a box that you'll be able to just move around in, to allow you to be, particularly in your line of work, able to control motions that wherever they come from and be able to control the forces that'll be coming upon you. And my experience of 41 years, there's nothing that I've seen here that cannot be fixed to allow you to perform at a much higher level that you want to be in.
Yeah, my only comment on that, not to contradict, is the word fix gets misconstrued, particularly in the medical field.
Yep.
So I just to qualify fix from a functional standpoint, it was a perfect segue, because what I'm left with is the mindful component. Because, this is not three guys telling everybody out there with their human condition to just close their eyes and dive through the wall, blindly. I'm going to do this, damn it. No, this is a mindful reflection of slow, methodical, committed movement and agility and flexibility and strength where you can. Mindful because you're aware when it's not going okay. And there's a dance that everyone should do. We all have a different sort of complex association of potential problems, whether it's mechanical joint problems or arthritic problems or functional propensities or osteoporosis or there are things that limit us inherently differently. So the point is, don't blindly dive through that. But also, let's not hide from fear in a hole or a cave because of those things and miss opportunities to optimize our own personal sense of movement and agility and performance and independence, which leads to confidence and self-esteem. You know, everybody's got primary problems, secondary problems, and tertiary problems. You know, when we talked with Tiki, she's got a lot of secondary and tertiary problems. Those are potentially fixable with better movement patterns, with better conservative treatment, with better physical mobilization and stretching and strengthening. A lot of strengthening opportunities, particularly as it relates to what Chuck talks about all the time, which is three-dimensional movement, where it's not about any one muscle function. She's stronger than I am in half her groups. It's really about the coordinated use of that strength to create what? To create what makes us relevant on a world with gravity, movement. You know, moving our body through space in a way that gives us what? Confidence and independence. That's what we want. At the end of the day, it's really that simple. So, you know, this mindful component is what sets the risk mitigation factor where, look, if it's clearly getting worse at a spot, the more you do while you're doing it, obviously that's a red flag. That particular movement needs to be checked. If it feels better the more you do it, but you keep it at a reasonable level so you don't go into severe payback mode and you do it incrementally over a long sustained period of time, that's going to be something you can build. You know, anything that just no matter what you do gets worse, worse, worse is a hot spot. It's a trouble spot. It's a mechanical liability and should be properly evaluated. But it's really complicated for normal, purposeful humans to have all these things going on at once and a discoordinated healthcare system that doesn't help you design the master plan and a global strategy. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the knee, it's not about the neck, the low back, the nose, the hip. It's about the global human. You know, I have the privilege, as I've said before, of skiing with guys who have lost both legs or their paras, and they overcame that to get back on monoskis and do black diamonds on a ski slope. So there are ways to overcome everything, but you have to mindfully navigate your minefield of both opportunity and consequence. And that takes commitment, it takes, you know, sacrifice, it takes, most of all, it takes a goal. It takes structure, it takes process habits. And with that being said, you know, thank you so much for sharing with us.
Improvement. I should have said improvement instead of fix. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And resiliency, especially in your line of work.
Waking up the resiliency is so key. I'll never forget the whispers. You're almost 50. You're almost 50. You know, I don't even know what that means now.
Yeah, but also in a world right now where, you know, we have, you know, law enforcement is a very important aspect of our world right now, you know, and the interaction with the civilians, and, you know, having a physical, healthy body, you know, keeps you confident in your line of work and allows you to do your job at the highest level. You're a performing athlete in the world of law enforcement. Right, and so you getting back to that high level of law enforcement on your feet, being active and being aggressive in a positive way, right, and aggressively doing your job to the point where you're creating positive opportunities for the community like you've always done. I mean, I think is gonna, you know, as soon as you get that physical wellness, you start getting that mental confidence, and then everything starts working. So.
No, and
Thank you for what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you all for everything.
Yeah,
Love
no,
you.
and to reflect on TA's last comment about the athlete, you know, back from the human performance experience, and I for a while was working on their spine project. We called them the corporate athletes. So for most of our community, we're all athletes of some sort, whether it's, you know, a true athlete, a corporate athlete, a police athlete, a surgeon athlete. We're all athletes. We all have to navigate our universe. And with that being said, thank you for participating in the Comeback team. We want you in our community. We want you to inspire. And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, our website, comeback.team. And, you know, we've got a new website coming. It should be live by the time this is aired. We're going to have a lot of videos for flexibility, strength, mobility, and ultimately we're going to continue with this mantra of show up strong, better every day, and be the best self forward. And with that, have a great week.